Sir, I need you to explain to me again why there's a tiny human child trying to give us her credit chit. Lieutenant Vrsk's secondary eyes kept darting between their commanding officer and the determined-looking human girl standing before their table at the Nova Burger joint, her arm still extended with the payment device. The girl, who couldn't have been more than 12 Earth cycles old, rolled her eyes with the kind of exasperation that only preteens seem capable of mustering. It's not complicated. You guys are soldiers, right? Space Marines? She gestured at their Galactic Federation Marine Corps dress uniforms. My mom says we should always thank soldiers for their service. So I'm buying your dinner. All of you. The 6 Arthosian Marines seated around the table exchanged glances, their antennae twitching in a mixture of amusement and confusion. They'd stopped at this particular Nova Burger, one of the few restaurants in Orbital Station 7 that could accommodate both human and non-human digestive requirements. After a long day of diplomatic ceremonies marking the 5th anniversary of Earth joining the Galactic Federation. Little one, Captain Zaktal began, his translator working overtime to convey both authority and gentleness. While we appreciate the gesture, this meal would cost nearly 200 credits. That's... I know how much it costs, the girl interrupted, pulling up her account balance on the chit's holographic display. I've been saving my allowance. Plus, I won the regional science fair last month. The prize was 500 credits. She beamed proudly. I've been waiting for the right thing to spend it on. Lieutenant Vrsk's mandibles dropped open slightly. You won a science fair? At your age? What was your project? Oh! The girl's eyes lit up. I developed a more efficient method for growing Arthosian cave moss in artificial gravity. I got the idea after reading about how your species uses it for both food and medicine. The current hydroponic systems waste too much water through evaporation, so I designed a new irrigation system that... Hold on, interrupted Sergeant Vkr'lak, leaning forward with sudden interest. You're telling me you solved the gravity-dependent water retention problem that's been plaguing our agricultural ships for the past 3 cycles? Well, yeah. It wasn't that hard once I realized you could use capillary action to... Captain. Sergeant Vkr'lak turned to Zaktal, all 4 arms gesturing enthusiastically. This is the project the Science Ministry has been buzzing about. The one they're implementing across the fleet. They said it came from an unexpected source, but wouldn't give details because of some political nonsense about not wanting to admit a human solved it, much less a... The girl cleared her throat loudly. So, are you going to let me buy you dinner or not? Because I'm pretty sure your food is getting cold, and everyone knows Nova Burger's synth meat gets weird if you let it sit too long. Captain Zaktal chittered softly, the Arthosian equivalent of a chuckle, and made a decision. Very well, young scientist. We would be honored to accept your generosity. Please join us. I believe we have much to discuss. Cool, the girl grinned, swiping her chit across the table's payment sensor before climbing onto an empty chair. I'm Maya, by the way, and I have so many questions about the bacterial composition of your cave moss colonies. News of the incident spread quickly through both human and alien social networks. The story of a human child spending her science fair winnings to buy dinner for alien Marines, while simultaneously being revealed as the anonymous genius behind a major agricultural breakthrough, captured imaginations across species lines. The next morning, Maya's mother nearly choked on her coffee when she looked out their apartment window and saw 2 Arthosian naval vessels dropping out of FTL on the edge of the station's defensive perimeter. Maya, she called out, voice slightly strangled. Sweetheart? Did something happen last night that you forgot to mention? Maya looked up from her breakfast cereal, then glanced out the window. Oh, right. Captain Zaktal said something about telling his superior officers about my Moss project. I guess they wanted to follow up? As if on cue, their comm unit chimed with an incoming call from station control. Maya's mother answered, her face carefully neutral as she listened to the message. I see, she said finally. Yes, of course. We'll be ready in 20 minutes. She turned to Maya, who was trying and failing to look innocent. The Arthosian Science Minister would like to meet with you. Apparently, you've been officially invited to present your research at the Galactic Federation's Agricultural Sciences Summit next month. They're sending a shuttle to pick us up. Maya pumped her fist in victory. Yes, does this mean I can skip school today? Her mother pinched the bridge of her nose, fighting back a smile. Just go get dressed. And maybe pack that notebook where you keep all your moss diagrams. The story might have ended there, a cute tale of cross-species cooperation and childhood genius, if not for what happened 6 months later. The Harvester Swarm attacked without warning. their organic ships darkening the skies above 3 Federation colonies. The initial defense fleet was overwhelmed within hours. As the second wave of reinforcements scrambled to respond, tactical analysts noticed something strange. The swarm's attack patterns had changed. In previous encounters, the insectoid hive mind had always targeted military installations first, followed by population centers. This time, they seemed to be specifically targeting agricultural facilities, particularly those growing Arthosian cave moss. It took another 12 hours for someone to make the connection. Maya's irrigation system hadn't just improved efficiency, it had turned cave moss from a supplementary food source into a potential cornerstone of Federation food production. The swarm, with their collective intelligence, had recognized this shift and adjusted their strategy accordingly. What they hadn't counted on was the response this would trigger. Absolutely not. Maya's mother stood with her arms crossed, facing down not only her daughter, but also 3 Arthosian admirals, 2 human generals, and a very nervous-looking Federation diplomat. She is 12 years old. You cannot seriously be considering... Mom, Maya interrupted, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. They need me. The swarm is specifically targeting the moss farms because of my design. Nobody else understands the system well enough to figure out how to protect it. We would ensure her safety. Admiral Zaktal, recently promoted largely due to his role in recognizing Maya's potential, added quickly. She would remain on the command ship well away from any combat zones. We simply need her expertise to fight a war. Maya's mother threw up her hands. She should be worried about her math homework, not military strategy. Actually, Maya piped up, I finished next month's math assignments last week. I was getting bored. One of the human generals poorly disguised a laugh as a cough. Maya's mother closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and then fixed the assembled military leadership with a steely gaze. I have conditions. And that's how, 3 days later, Maya found herself standing on the bridge of the GFS Indomitable, wearing a specially made Federation Science Corps uniform, with matching protective gear that her mother had insisted on, explaining to a room full of military commanders why they needed to poison their own crops. The swarm operates like any other hive species, she explained, pointing to her hastily drawn diagrams. They send out scouts to identify food sources, then share that information through pheromone markers and neural links. If we modify the moss's chemical signature to read as toxic to their sensory systems, they'll automatically avoid it. But won't that make the moss inedible for our forces as well? Someone asked. Maya rolled her eyes in that special way again. No, because we're not actually changing the moss itself. We're just adding a chemical marker to the irrigation system, like putting up a big poison sign that only they can read. The moss will be fine. Trust me, I literally wrote the manual on this stuff. Her solution worked. Within weeks, the swarm's attack patterns reverted to their previous strategies, which the Federation forces were well prepared to counter. The colonies were saved, though it would take months to rebuild the damaged infrastructure. 1 year later, Maya stood on a stage at the Galactic Federation's Central Assembly, trying not to fidget, as various important people made lengthy speeches about her contributions to both agricultural science and military strategy. She was wearing a new dress, her mother's insistence, and her first pair of low heels, her own choice, which she was now regretting. Captain, no, Admiral Zaktal stood beside her, his dress uniform gleaming under the lights. He'd become something of a mentor over the past year, encouraging her interest in xenobiology, while simultaneously helping her mother ensure she maintained some semblance of a normal childhood. And so, the current speaker was finally wrapping up. It gives me great pleasure to present Maya Thompson with the Federation's highest civilian honor, the Star of Innovation, as well as a full scholarship to the Federation Science Academy when she comes of age. Maya stepped forward to accept the medal, grinning as she heard the distinctive sound of Arthosian applause, a rhythmic clicking of mandibles, mixed with human clapping. As she turned to face the audience, she caught sight of her mother in the front row, simultaneously beaming with pride and wiping away tears. Thank you. Maya began her prepared speech, then paused. She looked down at her notes, then back up at the assembled dignitaries. You know what? I'm going to go off script for a minute. A year ago, I spent my science fair winnings buying dinner for some Marines, because my mom taught me to thank soldiers for their service. I didn't expect it to turn into all this, but it taught me something important. Sometimes the biggest changes start with the smallest gestures. She touched the medal now hanging around her neck. Everyone keeps calling me a genius, but I don't think that's what matters. What matters is that when I saw a problem, whether it was hungry Marines or Inefficient moss farming or space locusts trying to eat our colonies. I tried to help. That's not genius, that's just being human. She paused, then quickly added, or Arthosian, or Centaurian, or whatever species you happen to be. The point is, you don't need to win medals or save colonies to make a difference. Sometimes you just need to buy someone dinner and be willing to explain your weird moss diagrams to them. Admiral Vkr'lak's mandibles clicked in amusement as the assembly hall erupted in laughter and applause. Later that evening, at the reception, Maya sat at a table surrounded by a mix of human and alien officials, all eagerly discussing her latest research projects. She was back in comfortable shoes now, and had somehow acquired a plate piled high with both Earth and Arthosian desserts. "So," Admiral Vkr'lak asked, settling into the chair beside her, "have you given any thought to what you want to do after the Science Academy?" Maya took a bite of cake, considering. "Well, I've been working on this idea about combining Centaurian light processing crystals with Arthosian bioluminescent fungi to create self-sustaining emergency lighting systems for colony ships." The Admiral's antennae twitched forward with interest. "Oh? Tell me more." Maya grinned and reached for her ever-present notebook. Some things, it seemed, never changed. In the years that followed, the story of the 12-year-old who bought dinner for alien Marines became something of a legend in both human and Federation space. It was held up as an example of how the smallest actions could have far-reaching consequences, and how the combination of human innovation and alien technology could solve problems neither species could tackle alone. But perhaps more importantly, it inspired a generation of young humans and aliens alike to look at the universe's problems not as insurmountable challenges, but as interesting puzzles waiting to be solved, preferably over dinner with new friends. As for Maya, well, that's another story entirely. But let's just say that by the time she finally started at the Science Academy, she had already accumulated more patents, medals, and grateful admirals than most scientists earn in a lifetime. Not bad for a girl who just wanted to thank some Marines for their service. Tassie to the Academy years. You brought your entire moss cultivation lab to orientation day. The Centaurian students' crystalline features shifted in what Maya had learned to recognize as their version of raised eyebrows. Maya, now 15 and somehow even more determined than she'd been at 12, continued unpacking an array of sophisticated equipment from what appeared to be an endless succession of cargo containers. Her dorm room at the Federation Science Academy's junior division was rapidly transforming into something between a botanical garden and a mad scientist's laboratory. "Of course not," she replied, carefully adjusting the humidity controls on a glowing terrarium. "This is just the portable version. The main lab is still on the Indomitable." She paused, then added with a grin, "Admiral Vkr'lak said I could keep it there as long as I sent him regular updates on my research." Her new roommate, who had introduced herself as Crystal Song in Morning, though she'd quickly added, "But you can call me Crystal," shifted her crystalline appendages in what Maya recognized as amused disbelief. "You have a personal laboratory on an Arthosian flagship?" "Well, yeah. Where else was I supposed to keep it? Mom said no more experiments in the apartment after the bioluminescent fungi started growing in the ventilation system." Maya waved one hand dismissively. "Besides, the artificial gravity on military vessels is more stable than on civilian stations. It's better for controlled experiments." Crystal's surface facets caught the light in a pattern that indicated she was trying not to laugh. "You know, when they told me I'd be rooming with the Ellie Thompson, I thought everyone was exaggerating the stories about you. I mean, no offense, but you're kind of a legend around here. And usually legends are, you know, taller?" Maya suggested helpfully, standing on tiptoe to reach a high shelf. "I was going to say embellished, but yes, also taller." Crystal moved to help her arrange some equipment, her crystalline arms extending to easily reach the top shelf. "So it's all true then? The Marine dinner? The moss breakthrough? The harvester swarm?" "More or less." Maya pulled out her tablet, checking some readings. "Though people tend to leave out the part where I threw up from nervousness before my first Federation Assembly speech, or how I accidentally dyed an entire deck of the Indomitable pink while testing different moss pigments." "You what?" "The pink eventually faded. Mostly. They just had to repaint a few corridors. Admiral Vkr'lak thought it was hilarious, though he had to pretend to be mad for appearance's sake." Maya finally finished setting up her equipment and flopped down onto her bed. "Anyway, that's all old news. I'm more interested in what I'm going to work on next." Crystal settled onto her own bed, her crystalline form shifting to a more relaxed configuration. And what would that be? Maya's eyes lit up with that familiar spark that had, over the past 3 years, come to strike both excitement and mild terror into the hearts of Federation officials. Well, you know how Centaurian light processing crystals can store and redirect energy? Considering I'm made of them, yes, Crystal replied dryly. And you know how Arthosian cave moss can adapt to almost any environment given the right conditions? I'm starting to see why they warn new students about getting involved in your projects. Maya sat up, pulling out her ever-present notebook. No, but listen. What if we could create a hybrid system that combines the energy efficiency of Centaurian crystals with the adaptability of Arthosian moss? Think about it. Self-sustaining ecosystems that could power entire colonies. We could revolutionize terraform. She was interrupted by a knock at the door. Both girls looked up to see a harried-looking human administrator standing in the doorway, holding a tablet. Miss Thompson, there's been a situation. The Academy Board needs to speak with you immediately. Maya groaned. I literally just got here. I haven't had time to cause any situations yet. The administrator managed a weak smile. It's not about anything you've done. Yet. Actually, it's about something that's happening on Outpost 47. They're having issues with their moss farms. And since you're the leading expert. Crystal muttered under her breath. She's 15. Age is just a number, Maya replied cheerfully, already pulling on her lab coat. Custom made, with extra pockets for tools and snacks. Besides, I'm almost 16. Come on, Crystal. Want to see how we solve a real agricultural crisis? Crystal's facets shifted in surprise. Me? But I just met you. Yeah, and you're already helping me set up equipment and listening to my crazy ideas. That makes you my research partner now. That's how it works. Maya was already halfway out the door. Coming? Crystal looked around at her own carefully organized belongings, then at the chaos of Maya's half-unpacked laboratory, and made a decision that would later prove to be either brilliant or disastrous, depending on who you asked. Wait up! The situation on Outpost 47 turned out to be both better and worse than initially reported. Better, because the moss farms weren't actually dying. Worse, because they were doing something far more interesting. They were singing. Fascinating. Maya pressed her ear against one of the hydroponic tanks, where the moss was emitting a low, melodious hum. Crystal, are you getting readings on the vibration patterns? Crystal, who had quickly adapted to her new role as research partner and occasional voice of reason, adjusted her sensory arrays. Yes, but they don't match any known patterns of Arthosian moss communication. It's almost like they're trying to harmonize with something, Maya finished, scribbling frantically in her notebook. But what? The outpost's chief botanist, a nervous Arthosian named Dr. Vkr'lak, clicked his mandibles anxiously. We first noticed it 3 days ago. At first, we thought it was just equipment malfunction, but then the moss started growing in synchronized patterns, all oriented toward the same direction. Maya followed the moss's alignment, her eyes widening. That's toward the Centaurian sector of space, isn't it? Crystal's surface suddenly flickered with excitement. The crystal song. Maya, remember what I was telling you about how my people communicate through resonant frequencies? You think the moss is responding to Centaurian communications? Maya was already pulling out more equipment. But that's impossible. The frequencies shouldn't be detectable at this distance. And even if they were, Arthosian moss shouldn't be able to perceive them, let alone respond. Unless... Crystal's facets shifted rapidly as she processed the implications. Unless your modifications to improve water retention had an unexpected side effect. What if you accidentally made the moss more sensitive to certain types of energy waves? Maya stared at her new friend for a long moment, then burst into delighted laughter. Oh, this is perfect. Don't you see? This is exactly what we were talking about in our room. The moss isn't just responding to the crystal song, it's storing and redirecting the energy just like Centaurian crystals do. Dr. Vkr'lak's antennae twitched in confusion. Is that good? Good? Maya was practically bouncing with excitement. It's amazing. We've accidentally created a biological communications array. Think about it. We could use this to establish new forms of faster-than-light communication, develop better sensors for detecting spatial anomalies, maybe even... She stopped suddenly, her expression turning serious. We need to call Admiral Vkr'lak, right now. Why? Crystal asked, though she had a feeling she knew what was coming. Because, Maya said, already pulling up her communication device. If the moss can detect and respond to Centaurian frequencies from this distance, what else might it be picking up? And more importantly, what might be picking up its response? 3 hours later, Maya and Crystal found themselves in a secure conference room aboard the Indomitable, explaining their discovery to a joint task force of Federation military and scientific leaders. Maya had insisted on bringing several samples of the singing moss, which were now humming contentedly in their containers, providing an oddly appropriate background music to their presentation. "So you're saying," Admiral Vkr'lak summarized, his mandibles clicking thoughtfully, "that the modified moss has essentially become a biological subspace antenna?" "More like a receiver right now," Maya corrected. "But with some adjustments, we might be able to control the transmission capabilities. Crystal's been helping me understand how Centaurian energy manipulation works, and I think we can—" "It could be dangerous," interrupted one of the human generals. "If hostile forces could detect these signals—" "With all due respect," Crystal spoke up, her usually melodious voice taking on a harder edge. "Anything can be dangerous in the wrong hands. But think about the possibilities. A network of biological communication relays that could grow and adapt to any environment, powered by nothing but ambient energy." Maya beamed proudly at her roommate. One day into their partnership, and Crystal was already arguing with generals. They were going to get along just fine. Admiral Vkr'lak raised all four hands for silence. "I believe we're all missing the most immediate concern here." He turned to Maya. "Shouldn't you be in orientation right now?" Maya had the grace to look slightly sheepish. "Technically, yes, but in my defense, this is way more educational than icebreaker games and campus tours." The Admiral's antennae twitched in what Maya recognized as his trying not to encourage her but secretly amused expression. "Perhaps we should establish some ground rules for your academy years. Rule 1. No leaving campus without permission to investigate scientific anomalies. Even if they're really interesting anomalies? Especially if they're really interesting anomalies." He looked around the room. "All in favor?" The assembled officials raised their hands, appendages, or in Crystal's case, flickered in agreement. Maya sighed dramatically. "Fine, but can we at least keep studying this in my lab? You know, the one you let me keep on your ship? Which is technically not on campus?" Admiral Vkr'lak clicked his mandibles in resignation. "I walked right into that one, didn't I?" "Yes, sir," Maya grinned. "Yes, you did." That evening, back in their dorm room, Crystal watched as Maya carefully transferred the singing moss samples into her specially designed terrariums. "You know," Crystal observed, "when I applied to the academy, I thought the most exciting thing that would happen would be learning advanced quantum mechanics. I didn't expect to be helping solve biological mysteries and arguing with military leaders on my first day." "Welcome to my world," Maya replied, adjusting the humidity controls. "Just wait until we figure out how to actually control the moss's transmission capabilities. I have this idea about using Centaurian harmonic resonance patterns to—" "Maybe we should wait until day 2 of classes before we start any more potentially universe-altering experiments?" Maya considered this. "You're right. We should at least unpack first." She paused, then added with a mischievous grin, "But we can start the preliminary calculations, right?" Crystal's surface rippled with what Maya was learning to recognize as fond exasperation. "I suppose it would be responsible to have a theoretical framework in place." Maya was already pulling out her notebook. "Great. So, about those harmonic resonance patterns." As the two girls settled into work, the moss hummed softly in its containers, its song now harmonizing perfectly with Crystal's natural frequencies. Neither of them knew it yet, but this was just the beginning of what would become known throughout the Federation as the Thompson-Crystal collaboration. A partnership that would eventually revolutionize not just communication technology, but the very way different species understood each other. But that's another story entirely. For now, they had calculations to do, experiments to plan, and most importantly, a whole lot of unpacking to finish before their first class in the morning. The moss, for its part, just kept on singing. Unexpected frequencies. Maya. Maya. 5 more minutes. "Maya Thompson, wake up!" Maya jerked awake, nearly falling off her desk chair. Her notebook was stuck to her face, and several of her moss samples were humming what sounded suspiciously like a Centaurian lullaby. Crystal stood over her, facets flickering with a mixture of amusement and concern. "What time is it?" Maya mumbled, peeling the notebook off her cheek. "It's 0300 hours, and the moss is acting strange again." Crystal gestured to the main terrarium, where the modified cave moss was pulsing with an unusual bioluminescent pattern. "These aren't normal frequencies. They're not matching any known Centaurian communications." That got Maya's attention. Over the past 3 months at the academy, They'd mapped most of the standard frequency patterns that their modified Moss could detect and replicate. This was something new. "Get me the spectral analyzer," Maya said, suddenly wide awake. "And call Admiral Ziktal." Crystal's surface rippled with concern. "It's the middle of the night. Trust me, he'll want to know about this." 30 minutes later, their dorm room had transformed into an impromptu command center. Admiral Ziktal's holographic form hovered above Maya's desk, while several other Federation scientists had joined the call. The Moss's mysterious pulsing had intensified, creating complex patterns that danced across their instruments' readings. "It's definitely a signal," Maya explained, pointing to her data displays. "But it's not like anything we've seen before. The frequency patterns suggest it's coming from beyond Federation space." "Beyond Federation space?" One of the scientists, a Rigelian quantum specialist, leaned forward. "That's impossible. The Moss shouldn't be able to detect anything at that range." "Apparently nobody told the Moss that," Crystal replied dryly. Her crystalline form was interfacing directly with their measurement equipment, providing real-time analysis of the energy patterns. "The signal is getting stronger." Admiral Ziktal's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "Could it be the Harvester Swarm?" Maya shook her head. "No, this is different, more organized, almost like—" She stopped suddenly, her eyes widening. "Crystal, can you match these patterns against pre-Federation historical records? Specifically, look for anything similar to ancient Centaurian light language." Crystal's facets shifted in surprise, but she complied. After a moment, her entire form lit up with excitement. "Maya, these patterns are almost identical to the first songs. The original forms of communication my species used before we developed modern crystalline resonance." "Which means," Maya continued, her voice rising with enthusiasm, "we might be detecting signals from a lost Centaurian colony," Crystal finished. "One that left before we joined the Federation, maybe even before we achieved FTL travel. They would still be using the old frequencies." The assembled scientists erupted in excited discussion, while Admiral Ziktal raised all four hands for silence. "If this is true, it represents a major discovery, but we need to be certain before we take any action." "We can confirm it," Maya said confidently. "Crystal, remember that harmonic modulation technique we were working on last week? If we can get the Moss to not just receive the signal, but respond to it." Crystal's surface flickered with understanding. "We could establish two-way communication. But Maya, we haven't tested the transmission capabilities at anything close to this range." "No time like the present!" Maya was already adjusting controls on the terrarium. "Besides, what's the worst that could happen? Given your track record?" Admiral Ziktal's antennae twitched. "I can think of several possibilities." "That's why we have safety protocols now," Maya reminded him. "And backup systems. And fire suppression equipment. And that really nice cleaning crew who doesn't complain anymore about strange growth patterns in the ventilation system." The Admiral sighed. "Proceed, but be careful." Maya and Crystal exchanged grins. In the 3 months they'd been working together, they'd developed a smooth rhythm. Crystal began modulating her own crystalline frequencies to match the Moss's patterns, while Maya adjusted the environmental conditions in the terrarium to enhance transmission strength. The Moss's humming changed pitch, its bioluminescence synchronizing with Crystal's pulses. For several tense minutes, nothing seemed to happen. Then, "We're getting a response." Crystal's voice was filled with wonder. It's definitely first song patterns. They're asking who we are." Maya quickly input more adjustments. "Can you translate?" Crystal's surface rippled with concentration as she processed the ancient language patterns. "They're saying they're a research expedition that left Centauri Prime over 300 years ago. They've established a successful colony, but they lost contact with home when their communication crystals degraded. They've been trying to reach out ever since." "Give them our coordinates," Admiral Ziktal ordered. "Tell them they're not alone anymore." As Crystal began transmitting their response through the Moss network, Maya couldn't help but bounce with excitement. "Do you realize what this means? We just discovered a lost colony. And more importantly, we proved the Moss can be used for long-range communication. Think about the possibilities. We could establish a network of biological relay stations across unexplored space, using natural energy patterns instead of artificial transmitters." "One thing at a time," the Admiral cautioned, though his mandibles were clicking with poorly concealed pride. "First, we need to—" He was interrupted by a sudden shift in the Moss's luminescence. The patterns had changed again, becoming more urgent. Crystal's facets paled. "They're sending a warning. They say they're not alone out there. They've detected something else in the void between stars. Something that responds to their signals but isn't Centaurian. The room fell silent except for the moss's increasingly agitated humming. "Well," Maya said finally, pulling out a fresh notebook, "I guess we better figure out who else is listening to our new telephone system." The next few weeks were a blur of activity. The Federation dispatched a diplomatic mission to contact the lost Centaurian colony, while Maya and Crystal found themselves at the center of an increasingly complex scientific investigation. Their dorm room, already more laboratory than living space, became the headquarters for what the Academy staff had started calling the Void Signal Project. Additional equipment appeared daily, along with a rotating cast of scientists from various species, all eager to study their unique communication system. "I think I've identified 3 distinct signal patterns," Crystal explained during one of their daily briefings. Her holographic displays showed complex waveforms dancing in the air. "The first is definitely from the lost colony. The second appears to be some kind of automated beacon, maybe ancient technology from another civilization. But the third is weird," Maya finished, adjusting her now trademark lab coat. She'd added more pockets. "It doesn't match any known patterns, artificial or biological. It's like it's learning, adapting to match whatever frequencies we use." Admiral Vkr'lak, who had taken to checking in on them daily, clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. "Could it be another hive mind, like the harvester swarm?" "No, this is different." Maya pointed to a particular section of data. "The swarm operates on strict biological principles: signal and response, stimulus and reaction. This is more playful. It experiments with the patterns, tries new combinations. Sometimes it even makes mistakes and corrects them." "It's trying to talk to us," Crystal added, "but it doesn't know how." The Admiral's antenna twitched forward with interest. "And have you tried talking back?" Maya and Crystal exchanged glances. "Well," Maya began. "Define tried," Crystal added. "What did you do?" The Admiral's voice carried the weary resignation of someone who had asked this question many times before. "We may have sent it some basic mathematical sequences," Maya offered. "You know, prime numbers, Fibonacci series, that sort of thing. Universal language stuff." And it sent back the same sequences, but with corrections to our transmission efficiency." Maya couldn't quite hide her excitement. "Whatever it is, it's not just intelligent. It's helping us improve our communication system." The Admiral was silent for a long moment. "The Federation Council will want to know about this." "About that?" Maya fidgeted with her notebook. "We were thinking, maybe we should try to establish more direct contact first. Before this turns into another big political thing." "Maya, just hear me out. Whatever this entity is, it chose to respond to our MOS network, a biological system that combines elements from different species. Maybe that means something. Maybe it's more interested in cooperation than politics." Crystal's surface flickered in agreement. "The patterns it's using, they're like a combination of Centaurian light language and Arthosian pheromone signatures, but transformed into something entirely new. It's like it's trying to create a universal translation system." Admiral Vkr'lak looked between the 2 young scientists, his compound eyes reflecting the dancing light patterns from their displays. Finally he sighed. "You have 1 week. After that, I have to report to the Council. And Maya?" "Yes?" "Try not to accidentally make first contact with a new form of intelligence while wearing your pajamas this time." Maya looked down at her current outfit, covered in cartoon representations of various alien species, and grinned. "No promises." The week that followed would later be described in Federation records as either a breakthrough in xenocommunication or a masterclass in controlled chaos, depending on who you asked. Maya and Crystal worked around the clock, pushing their MOS network to its limits as they established increasingly complex exchanges with the mysterious entity. They learned that it existed somehow in the space between conventional matter, perceiving reality through energy patterns rather than physical sensations. "It's like, imagine if consciousness could exist as pure frequency," Maya tried to explain to yet another Federation science team. "It doesn't need ships or technology because it is the signal. And it's lonely," Crystal added softly. "It's been searching for others like itself, reaching out to any patterns it could detect. When it found our MOS network, it recognized something familiar, a hybrid system that bridges different forms of consciousness. The entity, which they had started calling Harmony, much to the Federation Council's consternation about naming potentially dangerous unknown life forms after musical terms, proved to be an enthusiastic student of biological communication. It absorbed every pattern they shared, rapidly learning to modify its own frequencies to match different species' perceptual ranges. But more importantly, it shared its own knowledge. Through carefully modulated Moss frequencies, Harmony taught them about other signal patterns in the void. Ancient transmissions, lost beacons, and strange resonances that hinted at yet undiscovered forms of life. "It's like we've discovered an entire invisible ecosystem," Maya exclaimed, her notebooks now filled with calculations and diagrams. "All these different frequencies interacting and evolving, creating something like a cosmic symphony." Crystal, who had become increasingly adept at translating Maya's enthusiasm into scientific terminology, added, "The implications for xenobiology and communication theory are enormous. We're not just looking at new ways to transmit information, we're discovering new definitions of what life and consciousness can be." Admiral Vkr'lak, watching their presentation to the Federation Council, couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. 3 years ago, a 12-year-old girl had bought dinner for his Marine squad. Now she was helping rewrite the Federation's understanding of life itself. The council chambers erupted in discussion as Maya and Crystal finished their report. Questions flew from all directions. Was Harmony safe? Could it be controlled? What were the military implications? The economic impact? Maya listened to it all with uncharacteristic patience. Finally, when the chambers had quieted somewhat, she stepped forward. "Members of the council," she began, standing as tall as her still modest height would allow. 3 months ago, I started at the academy thinking I knew exactly what I wanted to study. I had plans for moss farming and energy systems and all sorts of practical applications. She gestured to the holographic displays showing Harmony's complex frequency patterns. But what I've learned, what we've all learned, is that the universe is so much stranger and more wonderful than we imagined. There are forms of life and consciousness out there that we never dreamed of, waiting to share their knowledge if we're just willing to listen. Crystal moved to stand beside her friend, her crystalline form resonating subtly with the moss samples they'd brought. "We're not asking you to trust Harmony blindly. We're asking you to help us build something new. A network of communication and cooperation that spans not just species, but different forms of existence itself." The council chambers were silent for a moment. Then Admiral Vkr'lak spoke up, his mandibles clicking in what Maya recognized as his about to support one of her crazy ideas pattern. "I move that we establish a new division within the Federation Science Corps, the Zen Harmonic Communications Initiative, and I nominate Ellie Thompson and Crystal Song and Morning as its first directors." Maya's eyes widened. "But we haven't even finished our first year at the academy." The Admiral's antennae twitched in amusement. "Consider it an extended work-study program. Besides, someone needs to make sure you don't accidentally teach the moss to sing opera, or something equally catastrophic." "That was one time," Maya muttered, but she was grinning. As the council voted to approve the motion, Crystal's surface rippled with curiosity. "So what do we do now?" Maya pulled out her notebook, already filling with new ideas. Now we figure out how to teach a consciousness made of pure energy to appreciate human pizza. I have a theory about using taste-responsive moss variants to translate flavor into frequency patterns." Crystal's facets shifted in what had become her standard, "why do I encourage you" pattern, but she was already reaching for her own research materials. "We should probably start with something simpler, like teaching it about jokes." "Ooh, good point. Admiral, how many Arthosians does it take to change a light bulb?" Maya, right. Serious scientific work first, then jokes." She paused. "But maybe we could do both?" As the council chambers filled with the familiar sound of clicking mandibles and crystalline chimes, the Arthosian and Centaurian equivalents of laughter, Maya couldn't help but smile. Somewhere out in the void between stars, an entity made of pure energy was learning to understand humor through moss-transmitted frequency patterns. The universe, she decided, was a pretty amazing place.